Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the virtual STEM Expo. My name is John Hutchins. I'm the Director of Special Programs here at the Ruth Patrick Science Education Center, and we're so glad you could join us for our final STEM Explorer series. If you've not already, please visit usca.edu/seed in order to visit the virtual STEM Expo. Lots of great resources, exhibitor pages, presentations, and a trivia competition. We're so excited today that we have Eliza Russell with us from the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Eliza is the education manager and has the fun job of working with drivers, teams, and NASCAR professionals to take what they do each day and introduce students to understanding what goes into making NASCAR fast, fun, and exciting is STEM at 200 miles per hour. Good afternoon, Eliza.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Hopefully everybody can hear me. We're glad to be here. I also have my colleague Jason with us. So I'm going to turn my camera just a tiny bit so everybody can see Jason. Jason can wave. Excellent. So we're excited to be here. We're going to actually do a couple quick items. We're going to make sure you understand what NASCAR is. We're going to also get a chance to walk through some fun activities you can do at home. Some of them relate to what John just mentioned, where you can download them on the site, and we give you lots of great instructions. But we want you guys to be all set and ready. So first thing I'm going to do is show a little bit of a PowerPoint. Are you guys ready?
Load that in the tray for me. There you go. Get that sent over. All right, it is over. If you can put it in full screen.
All right. Sorry. Oop. Okay, hopefully everybody is now seeing where it says STEM meets racing. Perfect. Well, again, we are from the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So at first, if you actually have not come to visit us, hopefully you are within a short radius. You might want to come visit us. We are open, but we wanted to give you a quick kind of tour. What is the NASCAR Hall of Fame? Click, there we go. So what is a Hall of Fame? So a Hall of Fame really celebrates and honors individuals who have made significant contributions to whatever the Hall of Fame is about. So in our case, it is about the sport of NASCAR. So even though we're going live and this might be recording, I want you guys to stop and think for a minute. What actually is NASCAR? Think about where you've heard the word. What does it mean? What comes to mind when you hear this? So that you can start to paint a picture. All right, well, hopefully you guys have thought of some fun things. You could say them out loud. That's awesome as well. So NASCAR, it is actually most of the time what people think about are race cars and race cars going fast. And in essence, that's what we are. So we are honoring people at the Hall of Fame who have been involved in making the cars, engineering the cars, driving, all different types of jobs within the sport, and how they actually have improved it and advanced it through the years, because we're not young. In a few years, we're going to be 75 years old. The sport is. The Hall of Fame is only 10 years old. Okay. But what does the building have? We're fun and exciting. You can see that. We're going to show you some of the pictures of some of the things that we have here. There's lots of discovery going on, especially about technology and STEM. STEM is always available in the sport. We can't exist without STEM, and you're going to see those in the activities. So we were trying to get everybody to think about STEM doesn't just occur, just as John has been teaching you guys throughout the week, has not just occurred at school, it is all around us every single day. So a few pictures from the hall. So do we have race cars? Yes, we have lots of different race cars throughout the building. That's these cars that you're seeing, there's actually 18 of them together. Do we have ways for you to experience what happens at a race yourself? Yes. So the lower picture with a gentleman that looks like he's inside of a car, I want you to look really close at that person. That is actually Dale Earnhardt Jr. So in our sport, that is one of the drivers. He's actually a driver and he actually owns a race team. He just retired a couple of years ago from actually racing all the time. Now, racing all the time for us means you race 36 races a year. It's a lot of racing. The other side is that is what is called a pit crew. So a pit crew is responsible for changing tires at the track, getting fuel in the car, making sure that it can actually continue to race. So here you get to try to be a driver in a computer simulated race, and you also get to try to be part of the pit crew where you have to work together. So hands-on, you get to try some of the jobs. But you also get to see what does it actually mean about the car. So I want you to stop for a second and think. If you play a sport, think about your sport for a second. If you play soccer, you need your people to be able to play and you need a soccer ball. But if that soccer ball gets damaged while you're trying to play your game, what do? Right, everybody's saying, well, you just go get a new soccer ball. Right, so this is what makes our sport very different from every other type of sport. So in our sport, the car or the pickup truck, on the race day, you get one car, one truck, you get one shot to try to win. If it gets damaged, you can do some repairs. But if it's damaged so much, you're out of the race. You're just done. You can't actually go and get another car. So this kind of flips our sport on the other side, where a ball, whether it's a soccer ball, a basketball, a football, you can replace, or even a tennis ball. On our side, you can't replace the actual car. So that's why you need so many different team members, because all you're trying to do is all resting on one car and everybody around it. So that way, when you're here, you get to see a few things. All right, so that gives you some interest about what's happening in the hall. But let's step back for a second before we do our activities. We have to think about what actually is NASCAR. And you guys have probably heard acronym. So NASCAR stands for the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. So the word that usually confuses people is the word stock car. So a stock car you have ridden in. You might scratch your head saying, I've never ridden in a race car. We didn't say race car, we said stock car. So when we started in 1948, people would take their personal cars and race them. But they made a few modifications. They changed some things. So think about, what would you change if you're going to take your car, that everyday car that you drive, what would you change? I bet some of you are saying, oh, the tires, you're going to change the tires. Nope, they didn't change the tires. Oh, they might change the doors. Nope, didn't change the doors. Might change the body or the chassis, what we call the chassis. That's where you guys sit inside. Nope, didn't change that. What is the one piece that makes that car move? Correct. It's the engine. So even though we started back in 1948, and Jason can attest to this, so we may have said that we started racing in 1948, and I'm going to turn the camera a little bit so you can see Jason and I together. You guys may have seen the movie Cars. So Jason, from 1948 to more in the 50s, what is the one car that probably the kids actually do know?
They probably know Doc Hudson.
Ah, if you've seen the movie Cars, the very first Cars, there was a character called Doc Hudson. The Hudson Hornet is not just Doc Hudson. It was actually a real type of stock car. So everybody could just drive it. Now, when they changed it to become a race car, just like in the first movie, They changed the engine to make the car go fast. In fact, in 1952, the Hudson Hornets was going 178 miles an hour. So just because it may look old doesn't mean that it isn't still fast. You probably could say that about your parents and grandparents. Just because you think they're old doesn't mean that they're not on top of everything that's going on. So we changed the cars through the course of time, but in the beginning, we bought cars just like you do. So hopefully that helps to understand what stock car is. What is a race car then? So if NASCAR is an acronym, they have two primary jobs. Their jobs are to set the rules. Yep, just like school, just like everywhere, no matter where you go in life, guess what? There's always going to be rules. They set the rules. You can do this, you can't do that. But they also set up what is called guidelines. And the guidelines are what you guys have been experiencing all week. You've been doing experiments, you've been learning. In order to start to learn process, you have to have some guidelines. You have to figure it out. And then you try to say, okay, what can I change within there? And that's one thing you're going to get to do. So NASCAR says to each of the race teams, and a race team, just so you know, equals a car. Hopefully everybody can see it. John will give me a heads up if they can't. So you see a car. A race team equals one car, but it's not about the car. It's about the number on the car. So a race team goes with one number. Okay. There can be more than one set of cars for one group of people. So just like if you're doing sports, there may be 12 different teams that you're competing against, but they all go with one team. Same thing with a car. It's just one car equals one team, but there can be multiple teams. I know that's very confusing. So NASCAR sets our rules. We know that you got cars and car teams. NASCAR doesn't own those teams. They set the rules, they set the guidelines, and they set the safety, but they don't own the cars. They don't own a lot of the tracks. They own some tracks, but not all the tracks. So everybody comes together to make the sport happen. Stock car versus race car. So how do you know which is a stock car? How do you know which is a race car? So one last thing to look at. You can know that there's a number. So obviously the number is telling you that's a race car because most of us don't ride in cars that have numbers on them. Some people do. Just depends on where you're from. Do you notice that those two cars have some similarities to each other? So the fronts have a little bit of similarity. We know they both have windshields. Unfortunately, there's also differences. You might see the door on the stock car, the car that you would drive. There are no doors on race cars. That was probably the first thing that they learned to also modify immediately after the engine. Because if you're driving 178 miles an hour, why don't you want a door? Yep. You don't want it to open so you can fall out. So they climb in through the window. But today's race cars still have to look similar, a little bit similar to an actual stock car. So we're going to see a little bit of a video, and I'm going to make sure you can see, although I lost my mouse. There it is. Here we go. Okay, watch closely. All right, so you saw a little bit of a race. This is the Charlotte race that we just had about a week ago. For the first time, NASCAR said, well, the first time since 1952, NASCAR said, we are going to race no matter what the weather is. Normally, we don't race in the rain. We're going to show you a tire as to why we don't do that. Think about your tire on your bicycle. Think about the tires on your parents' cars. Okay? They have grooves. So the grooves are actually allowing rain or snow, whatever you might be trying to drive in, to get pushed away. Normal race conditions for us is you don't have those grooves. We're going to talk about that from one of your experiments as well. So I'm going to pick you up. Sorry if you get jostled, but the only way to show you the tire is I got to pick you up. All right, so hang on. Blow a tire, you don't want to actually wreck. So that's why we have a tire within a tire, so there's something to protect. Now here's the funny thing. You actually have the same thing on your car. Most people don't realize that you have a tire within a tire. So you've seen the smooth tires, now you think about how that works for yours. And that's one of the experiments you guys are going to do is about friction. And why does your tires have grooves on your bikes or on your personal cars versus race cars don't? And how does that impact what is called this friction? So if you're in kindergarten to 3rd grade, you're going to get to friction, I promise. But if you're in 4th grade and you're up, friction is something you're going to know really well. So one of the people everybody wants to meet is a driver. But drivers are not always men. We've had many women drivers ever since we started. So we're just going to show a little quick video to hear about a female driver. Her name is Natalie Decker. And I want you to think about how old do you think Natalie might be? All right, so John's letting me know she's a little too quiet. So we're going to pause that and I'll make sure I put this resource up. It's on our website and where it's linked, so I'll make sure you guys get it. So if you didn't hear, Natalie started racing when she was 9. She now races in what is known as our truck series. How many of you think at the age of 9 you might want to know what you're going to do for your career? That's pretty young. But that's how young the drivers have to be when they start. They start racing when they're 5. They start racing go-karts and others. But they actually have to know all the science, the math, the technology, how the car works. They have to be good to know how their car is performing because that's one of their jobs. Their job is not only to drive, but it's actually to give feedback to the engineers, to the crew chief, to all the different people that are involved in building that car. So I know we've been talking about a lot. So now it's time to start thinking about what does this mean for you and how does STEM come about? So you might have heard about the engineering process. It's one of the things you study in school. So in race teams, they have to follow the same type of engineering process. What is the biggest thing they're trying to do with their race car? They're always asking questions. One of the questions may be, I want the car to go faster. Another question would be The tires seem to be slowing me down. So what can I do to improve how the tires are touching the surface? Or, when I race at a really small track that's less than a mile around, so even not as big as most of the gym tracks that you guys have, the brakes that stop, so the brakes just like on your bicycle wear out and I can't stop. And if you're a race car driver, that's probably not a good thing. So they ask lots of questions about how they're going to improve. So then they imagine. No two race cars are ever the same. They think outside the box. They're always thinking differently. So when you've been asked to go outside and step away from your computers, you're having to use your imagination. That's what they're asking for everyone to do within the sport. Don't just do what you think is everybody else is doing. What could be something new and different? They make a plan. They're going to think about all the things they're going to have to do. They're going to step it out. Who's going to do what? How am I going to have this? Where am I going to get all the pieces and parts? They're going to build it, but then they test. Sounding pretty similar to the scientific method as well, right? But after you test, what are you trying to do? You're going back to improve it. So take what you learned in your test or your experiments, go back and go ahead and try to improve. Go back and test again, improve, go back and test again. It's not one and done. You're always trying to go. I always like to say, so my brother builds big farm equipment, right? He builds a pea harvester. He's been building on the same pea harvester for 25 years. He owns 9 different patents. He is always re-engineering. How do I make it better? So always improving. And then you're going to share. So within NASCAR, although you're competing, you're still sharing because you want to make sure you're bettering the whole sport. So if you figure out a better safety mechanism, like a gentleman named Jack Roush, he flew planes. Race cars could fly. They are going faster than it is to get a jet off the ground. So they worked together and he said, put some flaps like we do on an airplane on top of the car and on its hood. And he experimented and tested to make sure when the air hits it, instead of lifting it off the ground, it forces it back down on the ground. That was shared with everybody because you want to keep people safe. So it's important when you're about to do your experiments we're going to go through, that you go through these processes. It's not building exactly what we do. It's about you thinking about the whole STEM process. How do you use the science? How do you use the technology? How do you engineer? How do you throw some art in there? Because our cars, of course, are really fancy and pretty. And how am I going to measure? How am I going to do the math associated with it? So are you ready to try some experiments? All right, here we go. I'm going to stop sharing. All right, so you guys can see me again. So we're going to start with some of the basics, and Jason is going to help me with coming over to my screen. So you're going to see me a little bit, but you're going to see Jason as well. Let's start with the basic fundamentals of what would you have to have for a car. So what are the pieces and parts you immediately think of that you need for a car? Okay. Keep thinking about them for a second. I know the very first one, Jason, what did they come up with as the very first part of a race car?
Could be one of two things. My guess is you either said wheels or an engine.
So we're going to start with the wheels. Now we're going to use some wheels that we use on site, but I want you to think about what are things around your house that could be or a wheel. It doesn't physically have to always start out as a wheel. So he's going to show you what our wheels look like. All right, so our wheels are wooden. They have a hole in it. Critical. A wheel needs to have a hole. What are things you can use around your house? I have cardboard. I have a glass. I could put the glass on the cardboard and all of a sudden I have a circle because I can trace around it. I can then put a hole in the middle of the cardboard. That can work. I may like to drink soda sometimes. So I have bottle caps. They're round. I can put holes into them. I may decide I want to use my Lego sets. I might want to use my Connect set, so we get a plug for both. You may have wheels that have fallen off cars that you already have that are plastic. You are looking for something that is round, has some diameter, okay? So it needs to be a little thick, and then you're going to put a hole into it. Now, if you use plastic and you're going to put a hole, you're going to have to drill, or you're going to have to poke a hole through with something else. So it's critical that you have your parents, if you're younger, help you. Please don't pick up the drills, don't pick up nails, don't pick up anything without having a parent there to help make sure you get the hole in. Okay, we don't want you to get hurt. So they may have said that you need wheels. They may have said, as you said, that they have an engine, and you're going to think about 2 different cars. So different things that can be engines. We're going to have you build a chemistry car, which is a reactionary car, so a different part of science. And you're going to build an air-powered car, which means the air is going to move the car. So in any of these versions, you're not pushing it. So you may use a balloon as an engine. You may decide to get it to be air-powered. I'm going to actually use cardboard, and I'm going to make like a boat. So I'm going to add a sail. Think of all the different things you have that could help the car move. So Jason has a balloon. If you're allergic to latex, please don't use a latex balloon. Okay. So now you have your engine. We're going to show how this happened. You said, oh, you need a body. You got to have somewhere for the wheels to attach. So you can use a lot of different things for the body. So the body is what holds the wheels, holds the engine, holds all the pieces, and would hold the person. So in your case, you might want to use cardboard again, or if you aren't going to do this immediately, there's something happening on November 3rd. We all know it's the election, and you probably have seen all across the area that there are plastic election signs. Those are great to gather after because you can cut them down and actually use them as a body. It's a great tip for teachers, by the way, too. Don't take those plastic signs because all they end up is in the trash. So recycle those and think of how you can use them. So you could use a box. You could use a body that's a plastic bottle, which we're going to. Think outside the box. What are the different tools you have around your house? You don't have to go buy anything. Now, the next pieces probably are not things you think about. So everybody had heard the song. Jason loves when I do this. The wheels on the bus go round and round and round and round and round and round. And the song is wrong. So your second task, go out and look at your parents' car. Look at the wheel. Notice that there are bolts on that wheel. In NASCAR terms, we call it a lug nut. Jason will hold one up for you to see. Every car has lug nuts. They all have 5, no matter if it's a race car or whether it's yours. The whole point of a lug nut is to attach to some type of bolt and a screw to keep it on, which means that wheel cannot spin by itself. Are your mind blown? So you're going to have to find something to be used as an axle. So an axle goes in, you remember that magic hole we talked about inside of a wheel? The axle goes inside the wheel. So now it is the axle that needs to spin, not the wheel. Does that make sense? Think about that for a minute. The axle that goes into the hole in the wheel is what spins the wheel. So if your axle breaks, which is another song, then your wheel's not going to go round and round. In our case, we used dowel sticks You can use bamboo, you can use chopsticks, whatever you find that can fit within your hole. Now, if it's a hole and the stick are a little not the same, then you can use tape or something on the outside of the wheel on the actual axle to keep the wheel on. Okay. So axle, but we said the axle needs to spin. So Jason's going to hold up the board, which is our body. Jason, if you taped that axle to the board, is it going to spin? He says probably not. So if he tapes it down, he's going to show it to you. Can the axle actually spin if it's taped? Nope. So on your bike, on the cars, on anything that actually has a spin, including your toy cars, you have something that's called a bushing. In our case, a lot of times we use straws. So the straw, what do we know about a straw? It's hollow, so you can drink through it. So what could you stick inside of the straw? Ah, the axle. But it's too long, so what would you need to do? Cut it. So your job is to make sure that your axle can spin. So think about different tubes that you might have around the house that could work for that, even an empty pen. So now your axle spins. So now when you attach it to the board, we don't care if the straw spins, we care that the axle spins. All right. So Jason's building for a second, and whether you're going to do our reaction car, whether you're going to do the air-powered car, everything starts the same. You have to have the base work. So while he's building, we're also going to let you know you need to have it air-powered. But I mentioned the word friction. So friction, again, is where two things rub against each other. When you're in 4th grade or up, you're learning about lots of friction. Friction, it doesn't occur just between the tires and the track. They're going to occur wherever two things touch. So when you're building your car, you might discover that board that you are using or the box is touching the wheel. That is going to cause friction. So you're going to have to think about, how do I get rid of that? Again, you're experimenting and trying to figure this out. So Jason has got those wheels on. Part of the important part is you need to test. So does his wheel spin? Yes. So we needed wheel spinning, that works. Now he has to have some power. He's just moving a few items in the back. Remember that balloon we mentioned? So now you can think about how you're going to have air power. He's going to do a balloon car, but you could do a sail car. You could do anything that moves by air. If you want something simple and you might be a little bit younger, then use gravity. Try to go down the hill. Because everybody knows that everything has to move with a push or a pull. So you can try with gravity, you're going to try with balloons, you can try with a sail, a lot of different options. But your goal is to get your car to move. So Jason's going to build this one real quick here. He's going to put his straw that he had a second one of inside the balloon so that he can control the air. All right, we're going to see that demonstration. For the older kids, chemistry cars. You all learn about states of matter when you're young, that things transform. So you're going to build a similar base. The only thing is you need to use a heavier board because this actually has some power to it. So if you use light cardboard, it'll actually bend too much, in which you can experiment with, but you may need some heavier cardboard or plastic board or something to help with that. Same process. You're going to build the base of the car. Everybody's got to have wheels. The difference with that car is you're going to end up using a bottle because we have to use the chemicals, which are everything you have in your house, to make the car go. The only thing is, and especially for our high school students and middle school, you need to think about the diameter of a hole that you're going to put in the cap. So this again is another drill thing if you can. And this is actually a college level experiment. So you're going to try to figure out what size hole that you're going to put in. If you look on the website for the younger kids, we give you a sense of what the hole should be. But older kids experiment and figure out what size the hole should be. Do not put any holes into your bottle though, because this is where the reaction takes place. Okay. You're going to have, Jason's going to show his air powered real quick. So if you can, everybody can see. Can't see table surface. Hang on one second. Let me tilt it down. All right, so everybody saw that it moved. Your goal is continue experiment with it to get it to go farther and farther and farther. Then you can race all your friends or your family to see whose car is the best. And we know your parents might be the ones who say they have the best. So Jason's going to show the experiment, but we're going to have to do it in a balloon because we're not outside. We're actually in the museum. So when you go to do the experiment, you're going to have to be outside because it is going to make a little bit of a fun mess. Nothing's going to hurt you. In your house, you know states of matter. So the bottle is solid. You know that there's other liquids in your house and they can react with things. Reaction is how we actually move the car. So we combine air, we combine fuel, and when we combine those, nothing happens. Only in a race car is the same as if you were making fire. You must add a spark. Now, the funny thing is, this is what happens in your car as well. So once the spark hits the air and the gas, then they combine in a reaction, and now the car can move. Not safe for you to do at home. So this time you're going to pick either lemon juice, lime juice, or vinegar. Now, you all have done vinegar and baking soda. I will say you need to think about this, especially the older kids, because your goal is to get this car to move as far as possible. So the reaction time has to be a long duration. For high school students, get into the acidity, get into your periodic table. What do you know about these actual elements? You're going to always put the liquid in first. Otherwise, it's bad. So remember to put in your vinegar. Okay. Jason's again going to demonstrate it inside. So he's going to pour the baking soda into the tube. When you go to do it, you're going to pour it into your liquid, but do not have the bottle standing straight up. We'll give you this one tip because otherwise it's a disaster. The bottle is going to be attached to your plastic board. So tape it on with duct tape, then put the liquid in. Then you're going to put in the baking soda. But tip the bottle. Okay, by tipping the bottle, you're going to get the baking soda to sit in the top of the bottle. Put your cap then on, put your finger over the hole. It's attached to the car. Keep your finger over the hole, shake it to combine, go all the way down outside. Don't let go, stand not directly behind it, stand to the side. Then you're gonna let it go because this is what happens. I know we're covering a lot in a very quick time. But these are some fun, quick experiments you can do. And this is what they do. Race cars cost a lot of money to build. So sometimes they're experimenting in small scale and not with a full race car. Because when they cost $250,000, you don't want to screw it up because it's going to cost you a lot of money to fix it. So start small. And then they move. So that's testing. They're always learning, always going. So Jason has attached, and I'm going to tip you down so you can see, the balloon that has the baking soda in. He's going to pour it in. And you can see there's a reaction taking place. And it's inflating the balloon. Although the balloon has a small hole in it, but that's okay. Okay, you see the reaction taking place. The gas that is blowing up the balloon is going to power your car. So your car will physically move when you do it outside. Middle school and high school, you're going to try to figure out the dimensions of the hole for what's in the cap. You're trying to figure out how much liquid to baking soda use. You're going to try to do this over and over so you can get your car to go the farthest distance. Because not everything's equal. For the younger kids, although the older kids are still listening, one small hint, vinegar is not your friend. Go with something other than vinegar. Go with lemon juice, lime juice, or maybe a combination, but you didn't hear that from me. All right, so you're looking for success. So that gives you a couple things to experiment with. And these are not just experiments that you would find, anywhere. These are similar experiments that they would be doing in NASCAR. Now they might be using, the teams might be using different pieces and some different objects, but the concepts are the same. Remember that air-powered car? Okay. Here is our big thing. Here is your last big experiment. If you have a bike, where your parents may think their car is closer to a race car, that is not true, unless your dad or mom drives a pickup truck. Your bicycle is closer to a race car. So let's unpack that for 2 seconds. What does that mean? How can my bike be like a race car? This is how. Your bicycle, when you sit on it, picture yourself sitting on your bike. You're ready to go fast. How do you make the bike actually go faster? Correct. You can pedal faster. You're the engine. So you're going to pedal as fast as you can. But what's going to happen? You're going to get tired. You're going to use up all that energy you have. Again, for the older kids, this is where your energy comes in. Think of all the different forms of energy. You're going to get tired. So does a race car. Race car can run out of gas. Plenty of times on a track, there's been race car drivers who are just shaking it back and forth to try to get every little bit of gas out of it. So you're tired, but you want to go faster. What's the second way? You guys do this and you don't even think about it. You decide to go down a hill. So what is that force pulling you down the hill? We always credit Mr. Isaac Newton to it, but other people figured it out before him. He just gave it a great name and lots of symbolism and numbers and how do we track it. And he did all the math behind it because he figured out the science and he engineered how it could happen. But nature did this for us. Funny how we learn from nature. Gravity. So you're going down the hill and gravity is going to make you go faster. Right? So you can try gravity, see how much faster you can go. And somebody can time you to figure out how far you went, the distance, and over time. And guess what? You're going to figure out speed. That would be middle schoolers. So now you said, okay, I pedaled as fast as I can. And I've exerted all the energy I can. I've used up all the gravity energy that's possible. And race cars do the same. We race on tracks that are always banked. So if you put your hand straight, turn it sideways, that's how we race. So gravity helps us. Last way, you're going to have to fight air. So remember those air cars, you're going to bend over on your bicycle to let the air go over top of you, because if you sit up, it hits you in the chest and slows you down and pushes you back. Bend over, the air goes up and over. Gee, are your race cars straight up and down like they were in the beginning? Notice how it looks like the windshield is more straight up. It's kind of, but now nose is very flat. Today's race cars, it's rounded and it lays backwards just like your parents' car. That is all about the air going up and over just like you and your bike. The last thing that you and your bike and a race car have in common, these back tires are what drives the race car forward. Just like your bike. Your chain hooks to the back wheel. That is what pushes the car forward. and your bicycle forward, the front wheels steer. Whew. That has been a lot of science in a very short period of time, and a lot of technology, and a lot of engineering, and a lot of math. I think I was getting a sign that said I only had a couple moments left. Is that correct, John? Yes? I wasn't sure if I still had 15 or I was needing to come to an end.
Whatever you need.
Oh, okay.
We have some questions.
Okay, questions would be great. So I have covered a lot. So let's go to questions.
What is the fastest NASCAR?
What is the fastest NASCAR? So today, NASCAR has regulated how fast a race car can go. Okay, so in the beginning, I said that the Hudson Hornet could go 175 miles an hour. They actually have said it's really not safe to go over 200 miles an hour. So they have now changed the engines and told them at certain tracks, you need to put in some different pieces to help slow the car down, because if you go too fast, then the car again can fly. So we try to limit to 200.
How many tires does a car use during a race?
So remember how we said NASCAR creates the rules? It's not an unlimited number. So NASCAR says at the beginning, before the race starts, and the teams have to buy the tires, and they cost, you ready? $500 a piece. So older kids do the math when we say. So generally they buy sets of tires. So we have four tires in a car, that's one set. They usually tell them they can have, depending on the track and the friction level, again, what does the surface look like? They're usually getting somewhere between 4 to 6 sets. But they can reuse them, what we call scuff. So if you only ran a few times around the track and the tire's not really worn out, you can put that back on the car. So, but generally that's like 4 to 6 sets, that's all you get. And we race for 3.5 hours.
Are there any race cars that use alternative fuels besides gas?
There are race cars that use alternative fuels, but not within the US NASCAR. So the European division of NASCAR, still part of NASCAR, does have a biofuel option that they can use. F1 series of racing, which is different than our cars, they have an electric car. They use electricity. Currently, NASCAR does not have an alternative, but again, it's some of those things that they're looking on for the future.
Have either of you ridden in a NASCAR?
Have we gotten to ride in a NASCAR? Jason, you're first.
Not actually ride in a NASCAR, but I have sat in several race cars for whatever reason. A lot of times it's because when we have to move the cars on display purposes, someone needs to be in there to steer the car. So I have sat in a race car, but I have not actually been in a race car going at 200 miles an hour.
And for me, the answer is I also don't, but I did win a ride along and I haven't exercised it yet. So I enjoy the race cars and the sounds and everything from the outside, but the inside of one, I probably will give to someone else to ride in, only because I would probably want to ask the driver, even if it's just a casual person, too many questions, and I would distract them, because that's when I go to the racetracks, that's what I do. I'm talking to everybody and they're like, oh, wait, you're asking real science questions and not asking me, if how do I go to the bathroom? Okay, here's the hint, guys. Everybody wants to know if a race car driver goes to the bathroom, do they wear a diaper, all that fun jazz? The answer is no. Because here's why. Unlike your car, when they are racing, there is not a barrier between, there's a small barrier only for safety between the engine and where the driver sits. Okay? There is no air conditioning in these cars. They are wearing a fire suit. We're going to turn a little bit so Jason can show you. They're wearing a fire suit. If you can see it, he'll push it a little bit closer. Okay, this is specially designed like what a fireman wears with special inside to protect them. The ambient temperature inside of a race car, say it's 90 degrees outside, it's 130 degrees to 140 degrees inside the race car. So even on a fall day like Sunday, when it was a little bit cooler, it was still over 100 degrees inside that race car. No air conditioning. So why doesn't a driver wear a diaper? What are they doing? They're sweating. They're more worried about them keeping liquids in themselves than actually having to go to the bathroom. And most of the time when you get them out, see them come out, and it's been a super hot day, they need water really, really fast. Imagine playing soccer game in the middle of August when it's 110 degrees outside. The only thing you want is something to drink.
2 more questions. How do you get to work on a pit crew?
Very good question. So when NASCAR started, it was moms and dads, aunts and uncles, and people that were working regular jobs during the week, and on the weekends they would help out with the pit crew. However, that changed in about the 80s. So I'm old enough, I know when that was. So now they are hiring athletes that didn't make it at the pro level. So football players, basketball players, baseball players, because to win a race, it's not just about how good your car is, how well was it engineered. It's not just about how well can that driver drive, but a lot of it as well is about how fast can your pit crew change the tires, lift the car up, and actually get everything done. Because if you're in first, you come in for a pit stop that should take about 11 seconds, and your pit crew takes 14 seconds. Your driver goes back on the track at about 26th position. So to get on a pit crew, generally they're looking at the college level for people that have been in the sport, but you can also hear between North and South Carolina, there's actually 2 schools that will train you on how to become part of the pit crew, that you have to go to a school, and then you can try to get on a team. But you generally don't start out as the the tire changer, who's the one taking off, because that is the super fast and very high pressure job.
Last question. How many cars race in a race?
So depends on our series, but generally at our top series, which you guys know as the Cup Series, which is what the video you saw, we have 40. That's our maximum at a race. The other series have a few less, like 30, 38, and one has 26 in our truck series. But here's what makes us different again from other sports. For us, 40 cars always start the race. It doesn't matter if it's during the regular season, those 26 races, or whether it's in the playoff season, which is 10 races. Okay, sorry, 16 races. So then you still start with 40 cars. Anybody can still win the race. So even in the playoffs where you guys lose a team, so if you don't win, you get knocked out and the next team goes on, that's not how we work. So everybody races every weekend and anybody can win. We give points. So you're going to be a champion if you end up with the most points.
Those are all the questions that we have.
Excellent. Well, we definitely appreciate this. Hopefully you guys can do your experiments and that you have learned something about NASCAR and what's involved in racing. Our last thing for you to think about. So how many of you have ever said these words? Ugh, why do I need to learn that? I'm never going to use it ever again. Okay, come on, admit it. Even the adults can admit it. Sometimes we say, why do I have to learn that? Here's the reality. Everything your teachers teach you, you will use again. Sometimes we just forget that we did use it. NASCAR being a real-world application, we use everything you've learned. So whether you like business, whether you like marketing, whether you like to convince people on your social media accounts and photography, whether you are into science or technology, engineering and math, all of those skills that you are being taught now are needed in order to work in NASCAR. So we are what you guys learn in real life. All right, well, we hope you guys can come see us at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. If you guys have any other questions, you can always get in touch with myself, Eliza Russell. Easiest way, again, is our email address is super easy, Eliza, E-L-I-Z-A, .Russell, R-U-S-S-E-L-L, at NASCARHall.com. And if any teachers wish and you happen to be on, we actually can come into your classroom and virtually as well right now and do any programs too.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Eliza and Jason, for sharing that information and that activity. Looks like a lot of fun. We hope you guys have enjoyed joining us today. Again, if you have not already, visit usca.edu/seed to visit all of the virtual STEM Expo resources. You have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.